Carrie, I can't promote Neil to a panelist. I've just tried 3 times.
I tried 3 times as well. It won't let me promote him either.
Neil, you may be stuck as an attendee on this one. I don't know why.
Oh, we might have got it. Yeah, we got it.
All right. Just waiting on one of our co-sponsors.
How many of these projects will enhance our communities and revitalize?
Sorry about that.
No worries, you're back. All's well that ends well. Yeah, it seems to be very finicky today. I'm trying to promote people and they're not going through. Let me just text Counselor Edwards. Liz, are you, I've got one version of you in. Can you?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Awesome. So this other one of you that's in the attendees is not real?
Probably not. Oh no, it might be Pam, one of my staff.
Okay, great. Okay, then that's fine. That's fine. So then I just can't. And I see we've been joined by Counselor Edwards.
I'm here.
Excellent. So then I'm going to get going.
Thank you.
All right. I'm calling this hearing of the Committee on Ways and Means to order. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and also the Chair of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee. This public hearing is being recorded and live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv. It will be rebroadcast on Comcast Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Verizon Channel 1964. And we'll be taking public testimony at the end of this hearing. So if you wish to testify via video conference, please email Michelle, so Michelle.a.goldberg, Goldberg, at boston.gov for the link. And when you are called, we'll ask you to state your name and affiliation and limit your comments to just 2 or 3 minutes to ensure they can all be heard. And you can also submit testimony, written testimony on this topic by emailing ccc.wm@boston.gov. So if you watch this hearing after the fact and you would like to testify, you can do that afterwards as well, and we'll continue to accept it for 48 hours after the hearing. Today's hearing, let me just ask staff if somebody could send the counselors the Zoom link on this. I've had a few requests just now. Today's hearing is on Docket 0618, order for a hearing regarding the City of Boston property tax deferral due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That was a docket co-sponsored by Counselor Wu, Counselor Edwards, and myself, looking at what our options might be on that front. And then Docket 0732, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to increase the elderly property tax exemption pursuant to MGL Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41C, from $750 to $1,000, effective for the fiscal year 2021. And Docket 0733, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to lower the interest rate that accrues on property taxes deferred for eligible seniors from 4% to 1%, effective for the fiscal year 2021, pursuant to MGL Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41A. So those latter two dockets, 0732 and 0733, were both introduced recently by the administration, and they would have to do with these senior exemptions and another program for the fiscal year coming up, and they need to be, if they're going to be passed by the council, they need to be passed prior to that fiscal year beginning. So we're joined today by Nicholas Arnello, Commissioner of the Assessing Department for the City of Boston, and I think what I'm going to ask, one second, let me just let Counselor, one of my colleagues in. I'm going to ask him to speak first to these two dockets that the City of Boston has introduced, so that we've got the background on them and we can sort of answer any factual questions on those, and then go to this broader question about the potential for property tax deferral across a number of categories and talk through that with us as a council. I want to note that I've been joined, in addition to my co-sponsors, Counselor Edwards and Counselor Wu. We've also been joined today by Counselor Ed Flynn from District 2, Counselor Liz Braden from District 9, and Counselor Julia Mejia at large. Counselor Edwards is from District 1, and Counselor Wu is also at large. And I think actually, before we go to Commissioner Arnello, I'm just going to invite my co-sponsors if they want to say anything to help kind of frame the conversation related to our hearing order. And then, as I said, we'll first just discuss these two items that the city's introduced and circle back to this bigger picture question. So Counselor Wu, would you like to make some remarks?
I guess all I'll say, thank you, Madam Chair, for adding this into your already busy schedule in the council's docket. The initial idea was that as we see businesses and residents struggling, and especially viscerally small businesses struggling because they are complying with government directives and city directives, that we wanted to make sure to explore every possible way that the city could help ease that and make folks whole. And property tax was one way that could provide a little bit more liquidity to landlords or to tenants who have to pay the taxes in a pass-through arrangement. So want to appreciate your keeping that in the conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Wu. Councillor Edwards, any initial remarks?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was honored to work with Councillor Flynn on our first year to help seniors with tax payment plans, reduce the interest and possibly, assure that they could stay in their homes. And I just wanted to not only note that we had asked for an update, we did receive that, so thank you very much, but to say I think that there's tools in the toolbox we're not using and that possibly there will be more people who need help with that particular plan. And I'd love to talk about how we're going to get more people on that plan and looking at different classes of individuals who might be needing tax payment plan relief. So that's one of the things that I'd wanted to say from day one. And then the other thing is, I agree with Councillor Wu. A lot of it is trying to be as creative as possible with how we're going to help businesses. And one of the top things they talk about is taxes and help us out somehow, some way. And so I wanted to make sure that we were truly being as creative as possible. I appreciate the administration's elderly tax exemption increase and also percentage or interest decrease. I think that those are two wonderful opportunities that we're using to help people stay in their homes, but I love to balance how much is going to be saved versus why aren't there savings put on other populations? And then also, is savings at this particular point the most fiscally responsible thing we can do? So those are the questions I have. I really appreciate you being here. I'm so sorry, is it Chief Commissioner of Assessing?
Commissioner.
Commissioner. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for being here.
Great. So I think rather than go through and do opening statements from all colleagues, I'm gonna start by asking the commissioner to talk about these two items that the administration has introduced so that people can have the context on that. And then we'll do some quick questions on those and on kind of the substance of those. And then as Councillor Edwards alluded to, and Councillor Wu, I think we all see our commercial properties under enormous pressure right now, and especially our, owner occupant small businesses who are also struggling with property tax, who have a normal way of paying that they're not able to access right now. There's a lot of questions about what we could possibly do for relief with them. And I think Councillor Edwards just alluded to the need to balance a number of things, because we've just been talking about what impacts it has this morning on our programs in the city when we lose revenue. So there's obviously a complicated balancing act here. But I think it's a good conversation for us to be having. And so, Commissioner, I'll pass it to you first, if you can speak to us a bit about the intention and mechanics of dockets 0732 and 0733.
Sure thing. Thank you, Commissioner Bach, and thank you other commissioners for being here this afternoon.
You're promoting us. We're counselors.
Oh, so sorry, counselors. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Nick Arnello. I'm Commissioner of the Assessing Department. The first two things, as Councillor Bach had mentioned, is I'm here on behalf of the administration to advocate for the passage of two orders submitted by the mayor. The first one is Docket 732, and that is related to 41C exemption. So this is an exemption that is already in place, and under the current statutory framework, the exemption amount had a baseline of $500. It's an exemption for our seniors, so people that are 65 years or older, and there are also income and asset limits tied to the criteria of being able to obtain this exemption. So to be able to qualify for a single senior, the income limit is just under $25,000 of income, and for married seniors, it is $38,000. So relatively low income levels we're talking about here. And then there are also additional asset limitations on this exemption. So aside from their primary residence, they're not allowed to have a estate that would exceed $40,000 if they're single, or $55,000 if they're married. So it is, as far as these things go, relatively restrictive. We're also talking about an exemption for people's primary residence, so they have to be Boston residents. and they have to have been residents of Massachusetts for at least 10 years, and they have to have owned their home for at least 5 years. So just as some background, there are a number of limits on the population of people that can qualify for this. So it's really a program designed for our older constituents that have demonstrable need for the assistance. The baseline in the statute is $500. And in 2010, the city and the city council together adopted an increase to $750. So that's the current level of the exemption. And I'm here today to advocate for that being increased to $1,000, which is the maximum allowed under the statute as it currently stands. The other thing to know about this is it gets a little bit into the weeds, but that $1,000 exemption can go up to, if passed, it would be able to go up to $2,000 because of another program that we have that matches that exemption level. But that matching has to tie into your property taxes increasing, and there's some other steps involved that make that a little tricky. But it's basically to kind of help smooth out differences from year-to-year tax increases for these particular residents. The second program that I'm here to talk about is Docket 733, and that's related to tax deferrals. And so we're talking about this program is the 41A program. And for background, the letters and numbers are tied to clauses in the statute, so that they end up being an easy shorthand, but sometimes I forget that everyone is not completely familiar with where the basis is. So when I say 41C and 41A, I'm talking about specific clauses under Chapter 59 of the Massachusetts General Laws. So it's Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41C, Clause 41A. So the 41A Deferral Clause allows residents of the city that are 65 years or older, have also owned their home for at least 5 years and been Massachusetts residents for at least 10. And they're also income limits for that as well. They're a little bit higher. It allows them to defer their taxes. And the deferral is until they either no longer own their homes for whatever reason, or until the amount of taxes deferred is equal to approximately 50% of that property value. So there are a couple caps in place. The statute allows for an 8% interest rate. That's the introductory level. The city and the city council adopted a lower interest rate of 4% back in 2007. And I'm here today to advocate to have that interest rate drop to 1%. It's also important to note that anyone who entered this program before fiscal year 2001, those taxes are deferred at the rate that was in effect during that time period. So it doesn't lower an interest rate for someone that was already in the program on a prior year's payment, but it would lower their fiscal 21 taxes. It would lower the interest rate on those taxes that are deferred. So any taxes deferred under the program going forward would potentially be deferred at a 1% interest rate and not the prior interest rates. So it's not retroactive. If I'm not doing a good job explaining this, I'm happy to repeat myself and answer questions. And to the extent that you guys want to help me clarify, I'm happy to do that. Councilor Edwards had mentioned a concern about what the overall impact would be, because she's right, any program that is addressing taxes is a burden that ends up being shared by the rest of our population, and that is important to keep into consideration. So we are still processing fiscal year 20 applications, so I don't have final numbers there. I have final numbers for 2019, and they should be about the same level. So for 2019, the 41C program had just over 590 participants who qualified. And so that was a total exemption of just around $583,000 in tax dollars. And then for the 41A deferral program, in fiscal year 2019, we had 31 participants. And so that was deferring just around $167,000 in taxes. Deferrals, they're a little more complicated. You have to enter into an agreement. You have to get your bank to sign off on the agreement if you have a mortgage, something like that. So it ends up being a less utilized program, but an important program. And usually the people that enter into it have a real need for it.
Great. Thank you, Nick. I was wondering if you could just, what is the idea of this? I mean, what's the, like, I assume that it's related to the COVID situation, et cetera, but sort of what's the administration's reason for bringing forward these two matters now?
Yeah, so there's definitely a tie-in to the current health pandemic, and just kind of the economic burden that has come out of that. But I think there's also kind of a broader tie-in to trying to recognize populations within the city that have been struggling a little bit and maybe been longer term residents, had their property values increase dramatically. And so then their costs associated with those properties are increasing, but they're, on fixed incomes, and, maybe they don't want to leave the city, but we don't want taxes to be what drives them out. And so that's also a factor. And the deferral interest rate, I think back in 2007, when we lowered it to 4%, that was a pretty solid interest rate for someone to get at that point in time. And since then, interest rates have been dropping a lot. And so 4% doesn't seem as generous as it did back then. And so we wanted to kind of be more in line with some other surrounding communities and interest rates that they're providing for this particular program. So I believe like Cambridge and Brookline have like a 1% interest rate for this program.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so you think that if you went to 1%, you might see more than, 31 individuals is a pretty low number for a city of 700,000 people. Granted, they're not all property owners, but still.
Yeah, no, it is. It is a small number of applicants. And I think that, with any program, I want everyone that qualifies and has an interest to be able to take advantage. Obviously, the deferral program is not as generous as an exemption program because it's not, you're still responsible for the taxes, it's just not today, right? And I think that also kind of impacts the number of people that are interested. But it also creates a program where if you have the means to pay, then you will. But if you don't, and taxes are what's going to make that difference for you, you can put them off a little bit and not have that be an extra stressor on you.
Great. Okay, I'm going to go to colleagues, and I'll just say, let's just make this a round of sort of technical questions on these things we want to understand about these two, so that, because I know we want to have a broader conversation with Nick about possibilities on property tax deferral, but just quickly want to get people clarity on these. So I'll go to my co-sponsors first, and then to folks in order of arrival. So Councillor Wu.
Thank you. Just curious, yeah, those numbers were quite striking to me in terms of the uptake or lack thereof. Commissioner, what do you think? Is there an estimate of the total universe of eligible residents for these programs, and just to understand what the 31 is sort of in the context of?
Yeah, there's not, we're trying to figure out a good way to kind of identify what the total population is. And there's not really an easy way to do that because there end up being so many limiters. There's the income limit, there's how long someone has to have owned the home. and there's just the general interest in the program. So
What about just starting with some of them? So not perfect, but what if it was just amount of time having owned that home and age?
That is something that we could look into. I don't have numbers on it though, because I have not looked into it as of yet.
Okay, yeah, that would be very helpful actually as follow-up as you're able to. And then, this is an issue, particularly in certain neighborhoods. Every time I am having conversations, it comes up where residents very much feel that they are, what kind of colloquially is described as house rich, cash poor. And particularly for seniors, are there any, maybe not possible, say, remove the current fiscal projections and where we're headed in terms of the economy of the city in this moment, et cetera, just in general, are there programs or possibilities that you could imagine for seniors who have lived in the city for a long time, have, aside from the sort of work off and deferral, what else could we imagine could be possible to help support people who need to stay in their homes, but maybe the property values have gone up so much that the taxes are going up and they can't keep up?
Yeah, so, I think that the city and the city council has done a really good job of maximizing what is currently available under state law. So I think what you're talking about would really be brainstorming new ideas and new laws and new solutions, right?
Yes, that's
so,
exactly what I'm talking about.
right. So that it's kind of like you have the entire universe before you, and so it's a little hard to answer that question as to what a good solution is. I think that that's something that we could definitely kind of brainstorm about and talk about more. And I think that that's something that, would involve some of that community outreach and maybe discussing with constituents programs that maybe they've thought of that we haven't thought of.
Is there anything you've seen in other jurisdictions or other states even?
Not within other jurisdictions in Massachusetts, because we pretty much have every program that we can do, we are participating in. And I think the work off that you mentioned is like one of the more recent examples of a program to try and assist seniors. I don't remember exactly when we adopted it, but I know that I want to say it's within the last 10 years. And I don't know of other programs in other states, but that's a good idea to take a look at those and see if there's anything that other states are doing that we aren't doing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Counselor Wu. Counselor Edwards?
Thank you. I'm particularly curious about the age. If there's any way to allow for us to define seniors a little earlier, that would help, I think, a lot of people to be able to either take advantage of the workforce program, right? That I think would probably offer the most flexibility. Then there's looking at the deferral program. I mean, it's kind of a yes and no. You do and don't want people to be able to qualify for this program, right? I mean, the fact that, the ideal would be that people's limited income as they age is enough to pay for the taxes as they may be going up and their limited income isn't, but that's not the world we're living in right now for a lot of seniors. So I understand that essentially being tax-free for a certain amount of time and then having it paid essentially when the transfer happens. Am I correct? Of the property, right?
That's how it works, yes, Counselor.
Yeah, and so that's at 4%. We're trying to put that to 1% right now.
Yep, for any taxes kind of 21 and forward. So for people that are already in the program, those past years would be at the rate that they agreed to. Every year is like a separate agreement. And so every year they have to decide, I want to defer these taxes as well.
And if any person falls out or is in default of those programs, who's a senior?
So they wouldn't be.
That I was going to say, If
I
they're,
don't
if they're in
think it would
default
be-
and end up in the lien status, then they would then hopefully be caught up by the 62A amendment that Counselor Flynn and I did, where they would be put on a payment plan.
Yeah, and we also, so I think for someone to be in default, it would kind of have to be, for some reason, they forgot to apply in a given year.
Mhm.
And so we do a lot of work and reach out so that anyone who's currently under the program, we
Mhm.
presume would qualify for the succeeding year as they come up. And so we do a lot of outreach and multiple follow-up conversations to try and encourage people to apply for the program, or at least find out why they aren't if they applied. So let's say someone got the exemption in 19 and they deferred their taxes. Then I know we had a couple of instances where we were getting close to the April 1st deadline before it got moved to June 1st. And so we're doing everything we can to reach out to those people to say like, hey, you know, do you still need to take advantage of this program? We know you did last year. And we're kind of assuming that if someone is in this position where they're deferring their taxes,
Mhm.
if there's a change, it's because, you know, something happened, they didn't see the application, not that all of a sudden they decide they don't want to be in the program anymore.
One of the exceptions to the program, or you can walk me through confusions that I've heard, is when your property is in an LLC or you've put it into a trust,
So
and the
there-
ability to take advantage of these programs. Now, I understood, and this is maybe that as long as you are the benefactor person of the trust or property, you could take advantage. But that has been one of the possible reasons why people don't take advantage of this, is they assume they don't qualify because their property is no longer in their name. It's in the trust for whatever reasons.
Right. So in general, because every one of these exemptions, they're kind of slight tweaks in what ownership is considered based on the exact wording of the statute. But generally
Right.
speaking, if you have a property that is in an LLC, if the LLC is the only owner of the property and it's not an individual as well, the LLC does not qualify for the exemption because it's a business entity, and business entities don't qualify for this type of exemption by state law. And as far as trusts go, the way that there's, again, slightly different wording in some of the exemptions, personal exemptions compared to residential exemptions, but the way that the courts have ruled on both of those exemptions is that to qualify for one of those programs, just for that initial ownership test, you have to have both parts of ownership. So what a trust does, and feel free to cut me off if you know about it or I'm talking too much, but in essence, what a trust does is it breaks ownership up into multiple parts. And so you have a legal owner and a beneficial interest owner.
Right.
And to qualify for our residential exemption or one of these personal exemptions, you have to have both interests. So you have to be a legal title holder as well as have a beneficial interest in the property.
Okay.
Now, you don't have to be the legal title holder is the trustee. You don't have to be the only trustee, and you don't have to be the only beneficiary. But if you don't have both of those interests, then you don't qualify for the exemption based on how the wording is and how the courts
Is
have
that-
ruled on the statute language.
And that is again per the state statute, not anything that the city of Boston can do to make less burdensome.
No, and we read it as broadly as we can to make sure that everyone who can qualify and meets the criteria does.
Very well.
We are
And-
not interested in having people not qualify for exemptions.
And then just in terms of outreach, when you send out the tax lien bills, I get them on a quarterly basis and things like that. I don't see, and maybe that's just because I'm not in the age category, something that says, are you a senior? Do you need help? Here are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 programs that we have for you. Is
So
that,
we-
does
sorry.
that go out with the bill?
So our third quarter bill, there are a couple different things that we do for outreach.
And that's my final question, Madam Chair. I see you would be waving your gavel if you had it. So that's my final question, is honestly the outreach on the bills. That's it.
So one of there's some limits the state puts on what we can have actually on the bill itself. But one of the things that we do is every year when the after the tax value is set for the third quarter bill and we set the tax rate, we have an insert that goes along with that bill that explains kind of a number of programs that we have to encourage people to either give us a call at our Taxpayer Referral and Assistance Center or go to our website for more information. We try and give like enough detail that people will follow up, because part of the concern with having an insert is that if there's too much writing, then people just ignore it. And there are a number of different programs for elderly and for veterans and for active duty military. And so if we wrote out all of the requirements, the font on the single page insert would be microscopic. But we try and get enough information in there to pique interest, so that then people hopefully either go to the city website or reach out to us. We also participate in a number of community meetings and hand out brochures. We actively mail applications to populations that we think might qualify. But I'm always open to new ideas for outreach. So if you have some great ideas and we aren't doing it, let me know and we'll see if we can make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Nick. I think Councilor Braden may have had to jump off. Councilor Braden, did you have a quick comment or question? Just checking. All right, and let me just check. I think Councilor Arroyo just let me know he doesn't have any questions on this round. And Councilor Mejia also just said, okay, I think she's good for, oh wait, we've got somebody, President Kim Janey's here. So we've just been joined by Councilor Kim Janey. I think what we'll do, hi, welcome, Council President.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to join late and that I missed any presentation. Happy to listen in and then chime in later.
Yeah, I think probably what makes the most sense, because the three of us sponsors just asked a bunch of technical questions about these first two items. And I know Councilor Braden had to go, but just chimed in to say that she's definitely, that she's on the work-off jobs topic, Nick, which isn't obviously these two dockets, just saying that there's sort of limited opportunities in her neighborhood, like out by Alston Brighton. And so thinking a bit more about how we make sure that there's like real opportunities geographically around the city for folks who can't go very far. That was something she wanted to raise. And also she just said that she's like interested in more opportunities to reduce real estate taxes. So sort of broader topic of this. But I think probably what makes the most sense is for us to jump to the broader topic so that we can kind of have a set of questions and discussions related to that. And that'll also be a chance for the council president and other folks to come in. So I wanted to ask Nick if you could speak just at first to Councilor Wu and Councilor Edwards both flagged the fact that, you know, these are narrow exemptions that we've got from the state that we're implementing on the residential side. But I think especially with so many of our small businesses in such duress, there's been a lot of questions and conversations coming about what we could do in terms of property tax relief for them. And I understand that there are some like potential limitations on that. But I, it's definitely a recurring question and issue. So I would love to hear you speak a little bit about it from kind of an assessor's perspective, and then maybe we can ask some questions and try to push on both the question of angles, within the current law, and then to Councilor Wu's point, what the potential angles out, like, if we were going to start from scratch could be. So I don't know if you could just speak a little bit on the commercial side.
Sure. All right, commercial conversation one is it's an interesting conversation. And I think, given the current health crisis, it's an important one to have, just because there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of economic turmoil. And I think it's good to kind of take a look at what we're doing currently, see if there's anything we can do differently in the current framework, and then if there isn't, figure out if there's something we want to do to change the current framework. The quick answer to that is that in the current framework, there's nothing that I'm aware of in the statute that would allow for like a small business commercial exemption. It's not something that we can just kind of implement under the current system. So to the extent that we want to investigate that further, that really becomes a conversation of kind of like any policy question, like who do we want to benefit? What is the end goal that we are trying to achieve? And then how do we get to that end goal? And what criteria do we put in place to make sure that, we are helping who we want to help, and that trying to limit unintended consequences. And so not to intentionally push the question back to all the city councilors, but I think it's to kind of have a conversation about assisting small businesses. First, you need to kind of define like what you mean by small business. There's also this kind of inherent problem in property taxes where, to my knowledge, the vast majority of small businesses within the city of Boston don't own their real estate and they're renting their space. Even the vast majority of large businesses don't own their real estate and they rent their space. And so when you're providing relief through property taxes, you are likely not going to get that benefit to those small businesses. Because it's really going to end up going to their landlord or to the bank that has the mortgage on the property. And then the relationship that the landlord has with the tenant is going to dictate whether that benefit actually passes through to that end tenant or not. And so that is a really hard problem when you're talking about using our commercial tax system as a way to benefit commercial businesses, small commercial businesses. It's just kind of the thing that you're altering might never actually get to the people that you're trying to help. And I don't think that that's something that anyone wants. Is we don't want to create a program. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't think I've heard anyone talking about creating a program to help out multinational banks in the system. If that's the program that you want, we can have a conversation about that. But I think it's identifying who we want to assist, and then how do we get the assistance to them.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that's not who counselors are looking to help. I'm going to slightly out of turn because I had a miscommunication with Counselor Mejia. Just let her for a second ask a question about the interest rate thing in the prior round. And then I want to circle back with a question for you on this. Sorry to run the order out. Counselor Mejia.
So sorry, my apologies for that. That's my fault. Thank you for entertaining me. And I just have a few questions in regards to if we lower the interest rate, could we expect more people to defer their property taxes or less?
So I think that, thank you, Counselor. That's a solid question. I think that we can expect that lowering the interest rate will make more people interested in the program. Not sure that right now with the program helping approximately 30 property owners, I don't expect that there would be a significant increase, as well as the other limits that are in place on the program in terms of household income and the length of the home ownership that is required. And so I think that those are kind of backstops to it being a program where all of a sudden every single condo owner decides that they want to jump in. Also the age restriction. So it's a program that is just for those that are 65 years or older. The income for a single filer is $60,000. If it's married filing jointly filer, the income goes up to $90,000. But there are also people that have to have owned their home for at least 5 years and been residents of the state for at least 10. And so those end up being, pretty significant limits in our area. Plus, in general, the fact that people don't love to put off bills, I think is also something that discourages people from this type of program, because it isn't something that is just they can decide and they get a benefit like our exemption programs. It's something where they have to enter into an agreement with the city. The agreement gets recorded at the Registry of Deeds. If they have a mortgage, their bank needs to sign off. Like anyone with an interest in the property needs to sign off on the deferral. So it's a more complicated program, and that level of complexity, I think, helps limit it to those that are truly in need of the program to kind of sustain.
And I have one more question. Thank you for that. What is the breakdown of deferment when it comes to property taxes? Like how many seniors defer their whole tax versus just some of their tax?
So the deferrals that we've gotten, they've deferred their entire tax through this program. But so the 31 participants, the numbers I have here is in fiscal 19, they deferred 167,000 tax dollars. And so then that's money that, based on the agreement, they pay back to us once they sell their home. And so it's not money that the city collects it, they collect it down the road.
And I don't want to derail the whole entire conversation with like a bonus question here, but I'm curious about this myself. Is this something this program, could it be applied to folks based on their income? Can we do something like this to help support low-income homeowners? Is there something like that already? I don't know, I'm just curious.
So if your question is if we could remove the age restriction,
yeah,
we
not remove the age. It's not just to remove the age restriction, but to maybe add. It's the age and maybe people who make under $35,000 a year or something like that. Is there something? Is that a back? I don't know. What do you think of that?
So right now, this program, the restrictions that are in place are the criteria set by statute. So this program, one of the criteria is that you are older than 65 years of age or older. There is also an income limit in the program, so it's not just anyone. But the income for a single applicant is $60,000. And then the income for a married applicant is $90,000. So the income limits compared to our exemption programs are a little higher. But to an extent, that also kind of makes sense because this is money that will be paid to the city eventually, and the restriction is going to come out of their sales price when the home transfers.
Thank you. That's all I have for that one. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councilor Mejia. So Nick, back on the commercial question, what can you just speak to? I mean, what proportion of our property tax is commercial versus residential currently?
So that's a good question. I don't think I have those numbers. I think it's around 65%, 35%.
Which way? 65% residential, 35% commercial?
65 commercial, 35 residential.
Okay. And a decent aspect of that, right, is that we tax commercial at a higher rate than residential.
Yeah, so that is a result of our rate shift. So every year the city.
In physics, redshift is a phenomenon.
Sorry.
He's trying to provide you with an assist, but yeah.
I went to move my phone and decided I wanted to start talking. Apologies. So every year the city council adopts to have a split tax rate, and that split tax rate shifts some of the levy from commercial property, or I'm sorry, from residential property to commercial property. So if we did not have that split rate, then residential property would pay a higher proportion of our overall tax levy than they currently do.
Mhm. And can you speak to what data do we currently collect on commercial taxpayers? And I ask that because I think you alluded earlier to the fact that, I mean, there's the issue around the fact that the small business owner we're trying to help is not necessarily the owner of their property. But I think many of us, I know Councilor Edwards and Councilor Wu and I have talked about people who are both the owners and the proprietors. And so the question of, if putting aside the fact that there isn't a state program, the question of if one created one, like what data would you need, like to kind of like sift through who you're trying to reach? I'm just curious, like what we have on our commercial taxpayers.
So we have a bunch of data that we use for setting tax values. A bunch of that data, the vast majority of data that we have on commercial properties is protected by statute. So in essence, in order for us to get the information that commercial businesses are very protective of their income and expense data. And they're protective of it for a whole bunch of reasons, but mainly competitive advantage. So like one commercial landlord doesn't want them building next to them to know what their rents are. And so there are special statutes that are built into our tax laws that allow us to collect a whole bunch of data from commercial businesses, or they allow us to request data from commercial businesses. And then if commercial businesses don't provide it to us, they get fined and they lose appeal rights, and it's not great. But what goes along with that is there is specific confidentiality written into those statutes that I'm not allowed to share that data. Like I'm not allowed to share that data with other people in the city. That never mind the public at large or the city council. So to kind of ensure that we are assessing commercial properties appropriately, the data is really important to us. But at the same point, it's not data that I can necessarily provide to y'all on a very like case by case basis. But things like ownership data is public. So ownership data is relatively easy to identify. And occupancy data, for the most part, is public because you can go and see if someone is in the property or not. You know, if Richard's Pizza Shop owns the building and Richard's Pizza Shop is the business that you see, you can kind of make that connection pretty easily with publicly available data.
But that's not a field that we like. It's not like we check. There's no box in our system that lets you pull like businesses that own their premises. Like you would have to go look at, you'd have to go see the Richard's Pizza data. Like there isn't something like that we could pull.
No, there isn't, because it's not, that alone is not pertinent to how we value property from a market approach. Like who is occupying the space doesn't really impact what the property is worth, as much as what the space is and what the rent and expenses are for that type of property.
And what about in terms of that data that you're not allowed to share? And I remember when we were working on some affordable housing stuff through the Housing Authority, I remember the fact that there's like certain data that only the assessors can hold and like none of the rest of us have access to. So I have some familiarity with that. But I'm curious, are you at least able to do like a macro analysis? Like, could you, if you ask the right set of questions, kind of use your assessor's data to like kind of better characterize the like what our business landscape is in terms of the commercial tenants across the city?
I think there's probably leeway to do that. I think Yeah, like anything, it would depend on what questions you're trying to get the answer to. I mean, I'd be inclined to help out in whatever way we can. So if there's a question and it's one that I can't answer because I'm going to end up filing in statute, I'll definitely let you know. But I'm not inclined to just give that as a blanket answer to any request that you have, because
Well,
that's not helpful to anybody. So
we're grateful for that. Yeah, I would just say, and I want to let my colleagues go, I think the reason I'm asking these questions is because I, in my head, am really trying to balance the fact that I do think there's like a sort of it's like there's a narrowly tailored case here of like businesses that, especially that we would really like to be able to help through deferral. Because I do think there's an argument that, like, you know, your building has value, right? And so you own it, and the taxes are actually on the value. And if that value endures, like the tax debt to the city, like there's a legitimacy to that tax debt enduring. But the capacity not to demand it when we know people are not getting income seems like it would be a good lever to have. At the same time, I mean, I know that if you take 65% of our tax base, if you did something right now that let everybody defer, like we would very quickly run out of liquidity, right? And like, so you can't, I mean, never mind the fact that that the state wouldn't like let us, but we also just couldn't necessarily afford to do a kind of broad brush thing and wouldn't want to your point about multinational banks. So I'm just really interested in, it seems like it's a moment to move some things at the state when you are asking for a kind of very specific thing, but at the same time, I'm thinking about this morning and revenue loss and the fact that more than half the residents of the city of Boston don't own any property. And that those are a lot of the people who, when we talk about disparate impact and we talk about equity, it's those non-property tax owners who we are trying to assist with the things that we fund out of, right? And so, and that's part of kind of all being in it together as a city. So I'm just trying to drill down on those kinds of questions. I'll now pass it to Councillor Wu.
Madam Chair, but I'm good.
Okay, great. Councillor Edwards. Well, 1 second. You're sounding very distant, Councillor Edwards.
I have one question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So again, I think I'm going off of what you just said, which is very inspiring, and which is because majority of folks in Boston will not receive this benefit, but are going to be receiving the rippling effect of this bad economy. I'm curious with one, what went into the 3% analysis, but also if you're going to offer that without, I haven't seen a huge, organizing method for it. If you're going to offer that, why not offer it with, if you're a landlord, you're going to help or at least coordinate some kind of tax relief or at least some sort of rent stabilization for the tenants. So that if it's a multifamily owner who lives, let's say, on the bottom floor and they're living a triple decker and they have tenants, and this is a senior, why not coordinate that massive benefit in tax deferral one day with some sort of connection or any benefit, even the $1,000 raise? Why not coordinate it or connect it to some sort of benefit to help renters, majority of the folks in Boston?
So I mean, that's an interesting question. Under the current statutory framework, we're not allowed to create new criteria for whether someone qualifies for the deferral or doesn't. So we're really just, we're working within the system that we have. If it is someone who is sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna say that if there is someone who is a landlord, then that would be increasing their income. I think there also might be a restriction on whether they can actually defer those other units. But I would have to check on that.
So, I mean, if I understand what you're saying, then a majority or this program is designed for single family owner occupied homes that are owned outright.
That's the primary benefit. I mean, it could also apply to someone that owns a condo or a multifamily. if you own a multifamily and you're renting out those units, then that rent definitely counts towards your income. And there might be a restriction. Sorry, some of our statutes, if they're multifamily, you can only get an exemption or defer the amount that applies to your unit. So if you live in a unit of a 3-family, then you can only get like a third of your taxes deferred. I'm just not 100% positive if that's in this statute or not.
Do you see why I feel like there's a connection or a necessary connection? And I think, there's one thing for criteria that allow you to qualify, that you can even be in line, but you always set the conditions for how they comply, right? I mean, it's one thing to be like, you could be the pool of individuals who are going to be able to qualify for a program. And while you're in this program, you shall, for example, I'm sure you can't get arrested or whatever the conditions are. There's certain conditions that a person has for certain city programs to maintain good standing and so on and so forth in that program. So I guess I would want to know, this doesn't necessarily have to be a qualification, but one of the standards of good standing is if you have tenants and you're getting this huge drop, why not at least, I mean, you're guaranteed a certain amount of tax freedom, and then even you'll make even more, or your family will make even more, which is a good thing when you transfer your property. But if the entire time you're either raising rents or evicting people, I don't know. I mean, that was one of the issues I had with the rent relief, going directly to landlords with no conditions. But that's yeah, that's it for me.
No, I do hear what you're saying about, if you're in a multifamily and you are taking advantage of the deferral, but this isn't like one of those other programs where we kind of are allowed to add on additional restrictions, where we're really closely bound by the statute that either you qualify for the program or you do not. There's not like gray of you qualify and we can add on additional restrictions. We would get in trouble for that. I can get back to you, Counselor, on whether if you own a multifamily, if you're deferring the taxes for just one unit or all of the units. I'm trying to read through the statute really quickly and it's just not popping out at me.
Yeah, I think Commissioner, it'd be great to get that info as a follow-up. Certainly, because obviously, if you can't, I mean, if you simply can't get it on rental units, then in this case, it wouldn't apply. I think though Councilor Edwards's point is well taken about the overall question of if the council did think about other property tax things that we wanted to push up at the State House, making sure again that you're making that connection, that key connection between people who own and people who rent, because just from an equity perspective, there's a lot of impacts there. Councilor Edwards, did you have any further questions?
No, thank you. I look forward to the information, Commissioner. Thank you.
Great. All right. I think we're for now, I'm going to jump straight to Council President Janey, and then we were also joined by Councilor Anissa Sabi-George at large. Councilor Janey.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I don't have additional questions at this time. Thank you.
Great. Councilor Anissa Sabi-George.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you noted, I joined a few minutes late, so I don't have any questions specifically right now, but we'll review tape, the video once it's posted, and follow up with any questions I might have at that time. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Nick, for being with us today.
Great, thanks so much. And sorry, I neglected to say we're also joined by Councilor Ed Flynn, District 2, and Councilor Michael Flaherty at large. So I'll go to Councilor Flynn next, and then Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn?
Yeah, thank you, Council Block, and thank you, Commissioner. I was on the call earlier, but then I had to jump off. So I'll review the video later. I hope the questions that I asked were not already asked. But I just wanted to follow up and Can you talk a little about the program you have for seniors and veterans? How are you going to market your message to make sure as many residents that can get assistance from your office knows about the various programs, such as the senior exemption or the veterans exemption? What are you going to do differently?
So I think one thing that we can do this year specifically is as I mentioned, I think in prior city council meetings, this year is a recertification year for us. And so what comes with that is we kind of have a little more communication with the constituents, and we send some additional mailings. And so one of those is a disclosure notice. I think we can take that as an opportunity to send some additional information to people while we're already sending them a notice saying, you know, here are some programs we have. If you qualify for them, please take advantage. You know, we were working with the Boston Home Center in relation to the 62A repayment plan that you and Councilor Edwards have interest in, and we're, I believe, the initial sponsors of, to do some outreach on that to see if there are additional people that might qualify or have interest. And I think the Boston Home Center is a good resource for people that are kind of in trouble to look at all their options, because there are options for people that aren't just programs from the city or just programs from the assessing department. So we've been working with them. We work a lot with the H-Strong Commission to try and get our message to as many people as possible. Because you know, the programs that we've already enacted, I think they're good programs, and the city and city council enacted them so that people can take advantage of them. And so, you know, they need to know about them to take advantage, and I want to make sure that they know about them and that they're doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. My final comment is I was on Broadway in South Boston today, walking around and talking to some of the business owners. Many of them are women, and they're having trouble paying their property tax. What are we going to do to help women-owned companies? What are we going to do to help communities of color, owners of businesses, small businesses, Chinatown, South Boston, the South End? There's a lot of them there. We need to get them back up off the ground and on their feet. What can we do?
So those are some excellent questions, Councilor Flynn. And, you know, I think it's worth looking into what we have and kind of reviewing what changes we want to make in the city, and trying to figure out how to make those changes. The current tax programs that are available to us by statute don't let us provide assistance on that granular of a level. They're really set up for residential property, and they're really set up for, you know, we have the residential exemption program, which is a strong program. And we have the senior programs and the veterans programs. The kind of thing that you're talking about is really something that would require new legislation. And I think that, you know, I'd be happy to participate in any conversations about what communities we want to assist and kind of how we can get that assistance to them. I think it's also important to kind of keep in mind that when we're talking about property taxes, we're really talking about revenue, right? And so sometimes the best way to target a specific population like that is to create a grant program. So if you create a grant program that helps small businesses with legal assistance, then that can maybe target some people that aren't property owners, but then they can negotiate with their landlords and get a better lease agreement. And so, you know, that might be a way to get at that broader population that doesn't own real estate, and you're so much of our revenue is from real estate, and that percentage is going to go up as we worry about state aid declining, and we're worried about local receipts from excise declining. The solution doesn't just have to be cutting off tax collection, because that's a cost. It can be taking the revenue that we get from tax collection and figuring out some targeted assistance programs with it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, for taking my questions. Thank you, Councilor Falk. And I just wanted to let you know that you're doing a good job. We need to, especially for the seniors, we really need to make sure that we work with our seniors, make sure that we allow them to stay in the city of Boston in their homes, and work with them on tax related issues. And the program I had with Lydia, Councilor Edwards, is excellent. And we'd love to have your support in terms of making it more available to more people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. Pick up where Councilor Flynn left off. Just want to thank Commissioner Arenello for the work that he's doing in a changing world, particularly as the bottom fell out of Q4, and looks like that trend will continue for first couple quarters, maybe longer, as we head into the new budget. So I appreciate the attention to detail. You've always been very responsive to me and my staff on concerns we've had. And at the end of the day, I plan to support these 3 dockets. We need to do whatever we need to do to support our seniors, particularly our fixed income folks, people that are arguably, I guess, house rich and cash poor, yet they start to see things happening around their community, which is increasing their property values, which in turn increases their exposure to increased property tax. So anything we can do to help that population and others, particularly now in post-COVID, where folks are really struggling, people having lost their jobs, people struggling to pay their bills, and if folks aren't paying their rent, which puts stress on someone that is trying to pay their mortgage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just want to be on record of supporting these 3 dockets, and we'll continue to work with you, Commissioner, and obviously with the Chair of Ways and Means and my colleagues to try to do what we can to make to lessen the burden, I guess, if possible, but realizing that we're in a new reality post-COVID, and we're going to start to see some of these revenue shortages, and they're going to catch up to us pretty quick as we're going through our budget process now and looking at it as a multi-budget type of we're looking at multi-year focus for moving forward, and I think that's the reality that we're in. And I don't envy the position you're in, but you're doing a great job, and I just want to comment on that. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks again, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. So with that, I would love if any other councilors who want to ask further questions could just raise your blue hands so that I know. Otherwise, I know we have one person waiting to do public testimony. Just wait for a second, raise your blue hands or ping me otherwise. Okay, seeing none, I think I'm gonna move over. Move over to public testimony. So I'm gonna recognize Jonathan Cohn. John, if you can just introduce yourself and then just keep it to a few minutes, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. My apologies for my amusing background that I have in my apartment where I am right now. Jonathan Cohn, I'm a resident of East Fenway, active with a number of funds as well as chair of my local ward committee here in Boston's Ward 4. Thank you for hosting these hearings and for adapting to the new technology of what the situation now requires. Just wanted to testify, to express some kind of, let's say, hesitation, skepticism, and concern about any large scale kind of property tax relief happening right now, particularly because of how dependent the city of Boston is on property tax collection to do pretty much any basic city services. It's a massive limitation of Massachusetts state law that cities don't have more avenues for revenue collection than they do. But given that constraint, and given how it seems likely that the city is going to make cuts kind of across departments, many of which will can lead to layoffs, can lead to reduced essential services, it's vital not to make that problem worse by offering any form of, let's say, tax relief, particularly on a commercial front, as opposed to, let's say, a targeted front for individuals with lower incomes, because it will only make the situation worse in depleting city coffers even more at a time when the city needs basically all of the resources it can get in order to do everything that it does and everything that the city needs to be doing, but isn't currently spending on. So we just kind of on that point express kind of the desire that the council actually kind of view with kind of skepticism any proposals to defer large amounts of revenue for the city as it goes into the next budget cycle, where the current budget cycle is already expected to be difficult. It will continue to be next year. And the city needs to be thinking about ways in which the revenue collection can go up rather than go down. My gratitude again to the chair and for the councilors in attendance.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Seeing no further public testimony and no other counselor comments, I just want to give people one more chance if there's any blue hands.
I don't have any blue hands up.
Okay. Or real hands, right? Okay, great. So then it just remains.
Flynn has his hand up.
Flynn has a hand up. All right, Councilor Flynn.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So I'm just wondering if, as it relates to the Chinatown community, they've been hit very hard by this economic downturn in the pandemic. What strategies or what is there something we can do on property tax? I know I referenced it earlier, but is there anything that in your toolbox that we might be able to do to assist immigrant-owned companies with property tax assistance?
So there isn't anything currently that we can do under statute with property taxes that is targeted. I think that that's another interesting idea that maybe for proposing the creation of a grant program or something like that, where maybe what we can do is use the revenue from property taxes to try and provide some more targeted assistance to help out with areas that are hard hit, or to help out with constituents that have faced inequities.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, then I just want to thank the Commissioner for joining us today, and thank my co-sponsors, Councilor Wu and Councilor Edwards, on our docket. And also thank you, Commissioner, for the details on 732 and 733. So with that, this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee is adjourned. Thank you all.
See ya.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.